Hey everyone, welcome to the end of week 5, right? 5? There are only 3 more weeks left. Very exciting. I'm excited for some great demos. We have a wonderful special guest with us here today. Andrew is here. So let's do some quick demos. I will start. My name is Lauren Beatty, she, her, hers, and I live in Minneapolis, just north of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then I'll pass it to Caitlin because she's next on my screen.
I'm Caitlin, she, her pronouns, and I am based in Maryland in the DC suburbs. And I will pass it to Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby. Even though it always says Abigail, I just always forget to change it. I'm she, her, hers pronouns, and I live 15 minutes outside of Baltimore, Maryland. And I will pass it to Karan.
Hi, my name is Karan. Pronouns are he, his, him, and I am currently residing in Guelph, Ontario, about an hour out of Toronto. And I'll pass it on to Daria.
Hi, I'm Daria, she, her, and I'm in Toronto, Ontario. And I'm going to pass it to Louis.
Hey there, I'm Louis. Live in Sacramento, and he, him, his. And Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm in Seattle, Washington. And Andrew, you're lucky last.
Yeah, you're not in Maryland or Canada. Actually, you are, Lauren. Anyway, but yeah, Andrew, he, him. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I used to live just outside of DC. I went to University of Maryland for grad school, so really familiar with that area. Kind of miss it to some degree. Like I'm born on the West Coast, but had a really good time living out there for about 7 years total. I'm excited to kind of see y'all in action too. Just you can pretend I'm not here if that's easier, but I just like want to get to know you all a little bit. No pressure, just do your normal thing, and yeah, just excited to see your app. Excited for your demo.
Cool. All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, let's do it. Speaking of demo, do we have a pair that wants to go first? How about we go with issue number 9, which I think is Karan, Kaylin? Let's go.
Yes, it is. We're ready for our app. Just give me one moment. I realized I cleared my local storage. So I'm going to get the correct one. So for our issue this week, what the feature that we were trying to implement and did implement was basically a search bar, a filtering feature that basically once the user types in a query, the items list in the shopping list basically dynamically renders as you're typing the matching shopping list items. And for this, I'm just going to share my screen right now. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna, can everyone see my screen, the shopping app? Perfect. So this is our amazing app. And I'm gonna add a couple items. Caitlin won't forgive me if I didn't add mochi ice cream, even though I don't know what that is, or I haven't been near a mochi ice cream any time recently or ever. Chocolate milk. I do love chocolate. All right. So this is our app. Oh, sorry. In the spirit of TCL 22, I'm also going to add avocado.
Perfect. Good.
Sorry, folks. Okay, so we've got our list over here. And as you can see, we've got our filter items feature, which is what I was talking about. And what we, yeah, I'll just give it a go. So Jonathan had mentioned before we actually got into this, something about fuzzy search. So we wanted to implement that because that's a pretty neat feature when you're adding a search bar. So because a lot of the times the user won't be typing the exact same wording for the query. So for example, if I said chocolate milk, it will render the whole thing, all of the items that have choco in it. And then if I add milk, it'll give you only chocolate milk. Now, if I type in avocado, and you will notice that it takes into account the casing. So it's case sensitive, insensitive, the search bar. So it's basically gonna Caitlin's gonna go through the whole spiel of how we actually went about doing this, but regardless of whether the user makes it uppercase or lowercase, we will still be able to provide the user with the matching shopping item. Now, the final thing feature about this app that you'll notice is that there was a little cross button with a cross on it. You don't see it right now because there's nothing typed there. But if I were to type in mochi, and you see that over there, and then it goes back. Now, if I, one thing that you will notice is that if this app basically this feature takes into account adding empty spaces. So if I were to just accidentally press the spacebar, or if my cat were to accidentally press the spacebar, and then I start typing something like milk, it will take that into account. So that was something that we did have to work on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions, or Caitlin, did I miss anything before I pass it on to you? Or
No,
I will pass it on to you.
Yeah, that was excellent.
So could you, does it search in the middle of the strings too, or is it starting from the beginning of the string?
Yes, actually, I should have mentioned that. So if I went milk,
okay,
and then elk, and then obviously, I think that pretty much explains.
Great.
That's what you're asking, right?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, perfect.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So as I mentioned, I got my second dose today, and I was nervous that I was not going to be feeling up for this. So I pre-recorded a code demo. Are you all cool if I play that anyway? I'm feeling a little fuzzy-headed, so I think it might be better. Okay, cool. I'm going to play that instead of actually doing it. Okay.
So prepared.
I was really worried. I'm feeling mostly okay, but other than my arm, but my head is a little bit fuzzy. Okay, so you all can see this video player. Awesome. Yep. Oh wait, actually, I think I need to cancel and make sure that it has the audio. Sorry. QuickTime, share sound, share. Oh, okay, hold on. It needs my password. Great, and please let me know, like interrupt if you don't hear sound when I start playing, but here we go. Hey everyone, I'm going to jump into reviewing our code. I'm assuming Karan did a fabulous job with the demo. I would expect no less of him, but I'm going to jump in looking at our item list component, which is where we did all of our coding essentially. So in order to get started, the first thing that we did was to add a text field, allowing the user to search for their query in order to filter the list. So to do that, all we really did was add a label and an input. The input is tying the value of the user's input to the query state that we have. And there's also a change handler that is written above in the code, but this part was pretty simple. The hardest part was the next step, which was writing a comparison function to filter the shopping list and create a search results array. The essence of this was pretty straightforward, but in code review we actually came across a bug that was a little tricky to figure out how to solve. But essentially what we were doing is creating a results array that is filtering through the grocery list that we have from props, and it is looking at each item object in that list array, and it is returning the item name that has been standardized for capitalization. Skipping over this for now, and I'll come back to it, but lowercase, and then returning it if there is, if it matches the user's input query. Again, standardized for capitalization and removing any extraneous spaces that the user might have input. And then it is basically just adding that to our results array state above. Yeah, the next thing we did in implementing our code was to render it on the page, basically. So we mapped through the search results array and rendered it in the items list. The nice thing is that we didn't have to add any conditional logic here to say, like, if the user has input something, then show the results array, otherwise show the full array. Actually, just if the user hasn't searched anything, it's going to return the full array regardless. So we can just always render the search results array here. And yeah, it's just mapping through the array and just showing each item as an item component. The last step that we did before submitting our PR was to add a clear button next to the filter text field, which we did by just saying, if there is a query, then render the button, which has an ARIA label at Daria's suggestion and a click handler that is written above and is just resetting the query to be an empty string. So that was essentially our feature. However, in testing, in code review, Lauren realized that if the user inputs a backslash in the text field, it actually breaks the whole app, which is because a backslash is an escape character in regex, and so it confused our JavaScript and just kind of tried to escape from the function, which was a problem. And after a little bit of debugging and troubleshooting, what we did was, if I can find it here, step 2. Okay, we added this line of code. With some input from Lauren and Daria, we were able to figure out that what we should do is to check to see if the user has input any JavaScript special characters, and basically add kind of a neutralizing buffer around that character just to make sure that it's not breaking the code. So that's what this line is essentially doing, is to just kind of add like a protective shield around any of those characters to make sure that it doesn't break the code. And that was basically it. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions, or if you're watching this, I might not be present, but let Karan know if you have any questions, and I'm sure he will be more than capable of answering them. Thanks, everyone. Cool. All right, so let me stop sharing. And yeah, does anyone have any questions for us?
That was so good.
Yeah, the fact that it was like the backslash broke it probably also means that because you weren't sanitizing, like it would have been vulnerable to other types of attacks or hacks or something like that, right? So, and you know, the sanitizing that you're doing is like, it's good. But like in a production app, you'd probably like use a library that goes into more, you know, it's more thorough to kind of prevent XSS attacks or whatever the thing is, right? But
yeah, that's
but
a
yeah,
really good point.
Yeah, it was a good find. Kind of a good step in that direction. Really well done.
Thanks, team.
Love it.
Cool.
That was sort of a random discovery on my part too. I was just like, oh, just type in blah, 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 blah. I was like, whoa, what did I just type?
Cool. Well, if there's no other questions, should we pass over to Abby, Daria?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to demo the feature today, and Abby's gonna walk us through the code. So let me share my screen. Sorry, just a second. Okay, so let's start by reviewing our task. So the issue we were working on was to have the estimated purchase date to be computed at the time when an item is marked as purchased, and have that estimate recorded in the database. And through those estimates, the app is supposed to learn how often the user buys certain items. And we only had one acceptance criterion. When a purchase is recorded, the estimated number of days until the next purchase should be calculated and recorded in the database. This feature does not really have any UI, so we are going to be looking at the database. And in order to test it, we hard-coded a bunch of items that have purchase dates in the past. So we are going to check those items and see what happens with the estimates. And another thing that we did with the database is we added a field that is called purchase estimates. And this field is an array, just like purchase dates. And why it's an array, Abby is going to tell you later. So let's look at avocado here, the essential item for our group. Avocado has one purchase date that is March 23rd. And if I check it as purchased, we should have a new date here, and we should have the first purchase estimate added here. And this is exactly what happens. So our purchase estimate is 25 days. Now let's look at shrimp. Shrimp has 2 dates when it was purchased, and it already has one purchase estimate. So if I check it again, then it's going to have another purchase date and another estimate. And naturally, because the first 2 dates are a month apart, and the second 2 dates are just 1 day apart, our estimate is going down. Finally, let's look at eggs here. What happens if I check an item and then I decide that I actually do not want to mark it as purchased? Like, what if I made a mistake? So let's see, I'm checking it and I'm unchecking it right away. So we saw that there was a new date added and there was a new estimate added. And when I'm unchecking it, both are removed. So that way, if a user, like it doesn't matter how many times the user checks and unchecks the box within 1 day, it is not going to affect the accuracy of our purchase estimate. And finally, we also did something that was not exactly a part of this feature, like it wasn't in the acceptance criteria, but Louis suggested it and we thought that it would be a really cool thing to do. So currently, our shopping list only checks for checked boxes once when it loads. So it checks if the item was purchased in the last 24 hours. And if it was, then we automatically see that the box is checked. And then if the 24 hours have passed, we would need to reload the app to see those boxes unchecked. So what we did here is we made it so that they uncheck automatically without having to reload the app. And I have in my local storage, I have this interval set to 10 seconds, which means that we're not going to have to wait 24 hours to see the boxes unchecking. So let me mark tomatoes as purchased, and then in a couple seconds also mark milk as purchased. So 10 seconds is going to pass and tomatoes get unchecked, and then milk gets unchecked. Magic. So that's all for our feature, and I'm going to pass it to Abby to explain how we made it work.
Thanks, Daria. So unfortunately, I don't have a video and you guys have to listen to me live, but good thing for you guys, I'm like an expert public speaker, so it's fine.
So true.
So let me share my screen. Okay, so just like Daria showed you, our feature this week was to be able to take the function from estimates.js, which I'll show you in a little bit, and to be able to use it to calculate in our app the estimated time that a user would most likely buy a specific item again based on previous purchase data. So we added code in a few different files to properly implement the feature. So I'll go through those, but the bulk of our code was written in item.js. So I have pulled up app.js right here. So this is the smallest bit of code right there that we added in. Otherwise, our array that we had added purchase estimates, it would be undefined. And so I'm gonna switch over real quick to add items. And here's a small bit of code that we added here. So we added in order to push this field when adding an item. And then I'm gonna go to where the bulk of our code is, which is in item.js. So I'm gonna start right here. So on line 6, you see that we destructured the props into user token and item. And then down here, you see that we added our array purchase estimates. And we set this equal to an empty array. So we did this because in some items, so like the older ones that we had added, it doesn't have our array of purchase estimates initiated. So when we're trying to get the value of purchase estimates from like that older item, we're getting undefined. And as you'll see, like all of our code is written to handle arrays. So this is helping in that aspect, which was definitely a Lewis suggestion. So thank you, Lewis. So I'm gonna go down into our use effect hook. So basically this is the magic hook. That's what's almost monitoring how long the item that we checked has been checked. So right in here, we're seeing if there are dates in the purchase date array. And then if there are, we're gonna calculate the date of the last purchase date in the purchase dates array. And down here, we're checking the time on that and we're comparing it to see if it's been longer than 24 hours or like in our app, 86,400 seconds that Daria changed to 10 seconds for the demo. So down here in our handle, click a function. So we looked at this and we knew we wanted to kind of handle the purchase estimates a little like the purchase dates because they're both empty arrays. So what we're doing right here is we're checking our purchase estimates array and seeing if there's anything in that array. And if there is, we're going to pop it off or take the last element in the purchase estimates array and do away with it from the database. So this is updating the database right here. And then else, we are going to use new date to calculate a new date. And then we are setting new dates equal to so we're using the spread operator for purchase dates to take each of those dates out of the purchase dates array, and then we're adding the new date that we just calculated right here into that array. And so as I scroll down, the number of purchases is the length of the new dates array, and then right here, so we're declaring last estimate and latest interval. So at first glance, not really that interesting, But when we declare them, we don't give them any value on purpose because of how estimates.js, the calculation that we use, treats its arguments. So we need to make sure that if we don't have 2 or more purchases, then what we're passing to estimates.js is undefined. So we couldn't pass like null or 0 because they're actually all considered numbers within the function. And in estimate.js, we have this logic that it only works if it's not a number. So we're defining them in our if statements, but the logic is not working when the both values will, if it's not working, the both values will remain like undefined. That's really complex. So as I continue down, so right here, if we have more than 2 purchases, we're gonna finally calculate the last state using a method from a library, data FNS. So we're basically just calculating or grabbing the last element in the purchase dates array into seconds, and that's our last state. And then for latest interval, if we're using the method, the difference in days, and we're using the new date that we calculated up here, and then the last date that we just calculated. So down here, if there's a purchase estimate in the purchase estimate array, the last estimate is going to be equal to the last element in the purchase estimate array. So as we go down here, finally, we're going to actually call the function from estimates.js into new interval, and we're passing through what we had just calculated above. So last estimate, latest interval, and our number of purchases. So if we get our new interval, and we're going to push our new interval to our purchase estimates array in the database. So after that, I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our estimates like JS. This is the function that we're using. And so I think it's important to note the difference between last estimate and latest interval, because first glance we're like, are they the same thing? So the last estimate is the last estimated purchase interval, and then the latest interval is the actual number of days between the most recent and previous purchases. And then the number of purchases is self-explanatory. And then, so in here, which I think is important to note, is that if, so if the number of purchases is at least 2 or greater, then, but also if the last estimate is not a number, it's gonna assign it 14 days. So something to keep in mind is that if we have a bunch of dates and we have a 7-date distance between them, and we try to check the box, we're gonna get an estimate that will be more than 7 days because we're assuming that the default date is 14. But as the app learns more and more, and as we have more and more purchase dates to base like the analysis, like this calculation, we're gonna get more and more accurate as time goes on. Let me think. And I think the rest of this calculation is pretty self-explanatory, but just pointing out that like this calculation is not like taking all the dates and averaging them. It takes the latest 2, or it takes 2 of the latest ones and then takes the previous estimate. So if we don't have a previous estimate, it doesn't really matter how many dates we have available. Our first prediction may not be the most accurate. So the biggest challenge with this is probably, just dealing with the dates. So we had the dates that were showing in the database as one format, and then when we tried to retrieve them from the database, they came back as a different format. We grabbed an object that had seconds and nanoseconds, and we were like, well, what is happening? So we eventually decided to use the library, the date FNS for that, and it made it so much more simpler. So that was super helpful in tackling this. And I think that's it. Daria, did I miss anything?
No, I think that it's a perfect explanation. Great job.
You know, after what seems like 15 minutes of talking, I will stop talking.
Good job.
That was
Abby.
amazing because it was really clear that you thoroughly understood the whole thing, because you were keeping all the naming and stuff is all so confusing, and you were keeping it all straight. And yeah, that was great explanation, great demo too. I loved seeing it side by side like that, so you could kind of see it in action.
Thank you.
Did you all try, did you first try doing it without the library and then switched? Yeah, I love using that library so much. It does so much for you. I mean, great job for trying, but
I was thinking to try without a library. It's like hardcore JS, let's do this. But at the end of the day, like I think the database finally broke me, because the dates were coming back in a totally different format than they were showing in the database. So yeah, the library just made it much simpler for us.
Nice. I love how you are like listening for 24 hours to pass and then magically unchecking the boxes again. That's really awesome.
This is a small thing relative to the scope of everything you all did, but I thought it was really nice the way you all simplified the props that were being passed between components. That makes it a lot easier to follow the code. So well done there.
Well done. Okay, so that's it for the demos. Is it Lauren?
Yeah, nice work, everyone. So I think last week's issue with the dates and then this week's issue with the dates were probably the two most challenging of the whole project. So great job, everybody. Good job. Really nice job. All right, let me share my screen. So today we're talking about communication for developers. Just let me know if you can't see my screen. This is one of my favorite topics, and it's something I've just learned a ton about in the last couple of years. I think it's a really important topic, especially for those of us who went through boot camp or self-taught developers, or even those of us who have computer science degrees. I don't know that this is something that we talk a lot about in school. And this is a huge part of what we do as developers. So I'm excited to talk about it today. Communication for devs. In particular, we're talking about written communication, the kind of communication that we do asynchronously, that records kind of long-term goals and progress. Let's see. So communication, I'm not going to do present mode, but so communication is really key. It is the thing that will set you apart as like a super amazing developer. Being able to code really well is great, but being able to communicate with one another, write really great documentation will make you a next level superstar developer, and your team will love you. Love you, love you. So we're going to talk about a few different kinds of written communications, and we'll start with documentation. So what is documentation? Documentation as a developer is a way to remember all of the things that we do, because we go through, we write so much code and we study so many different problems that it is hard to remember day to day what are all of the things that I did. And writing down things really helps me, and I think it helps a lot of people learn and retain information. And it's a great tool for revisiting decisions. So for example, on my team at work, when we're trying to think about a new architecture or a new technology, that we want to use, we go through a process of documenting it called an RFC, or a request for change. So this is an RFC that Gustavo on my team wrote when we were thinking of moving away from using Moment.js to a different library, which happens just to be Date FNS, right? Something that we're really familiar with. So Gustavo went and studied, how are we using Moment.js? What are the things that we need this new library to be able to accomplish? What are the different options that are out there? And then he documented this information for us, the rest of us on this team, detailing, like, again, how do we use Moment.js? What are the alternatives? What do these other libraries provide that we need, and what do they not provide? And then he can make a recommendation to us as a team, like, this is the library that I think that we should use, but it's just so well documented. So now we as a team have all of this information without having to do all of the research ourselves, one. Two, in 2 years' time, we can look back at this document and know exactly, why did we choose Date FNS again? I think this has happened on our team in the past, where we've been using a particular library. For example, we were using a library called Glamorous for our CSS and JS solution, and we needed to move to something else. But then when we looked back in our documentation, we didn't really have a record of why we made that decision to use Glamorous in the first place. So we didn't understand what we liked about Glamorous in the first place, like why we made that decision in the first place. So it's really nice to be able to revisit this document and know why we made those decisions. It's super helpful for onboarding new team members. Some of you, right, are starting new jobs, and having really fantastic onboarding documentation will make your life so much easier. It will empower you to seek out knowledge, like, you know where to look for knowledge, rather than always having to rely on somebody being around to be able to ask them that question. So having great documentation is so helpful for onboarding new team members, and avoids institutional knowledge, right? There's always that one person on your team who knows everything. He knows the person to talk to find out how to access that one database, and how do I go through this process. If that's documented somewhere, like, you can find that out on your own. And again, it's something that empowers all team members. So you all, especially for all of us that maybe are starting new jobs, you have this superpower that you're coming into a situation that you don't know very well, and you can check out their onboarding documentation and read through their documentation and find out what was missing, what was something that you really could have used to have known, and you can add to that documentation. So it's really kind of a superpower to be coming in as a new person on a team. Oh, and this is a wonderful tip from Stacy. So a great way to format your documentation. You want to write for the person that knows the least. So somebody that needs lots of knowledge. They need to learn all of the things, but then you need to format your document so that it's easy for somebody who just needs to find a quick reference to something. So for example, you've all probably been looking at the React router documentation, right, during the first couple of weeks. So this is super in-depth documentation. It's really quite easy to follow. They have wonderful examples. And then it's very easy to find what you're looking for on the left navigation, right? Oh, I just need to know what the use history hook does, right? So I can just click right into that area. It gives me the information, describes it, and then shows me a code snippet. So this is a great example of documentation that is really rich, and it's pretty easy to find things. Great. So a little backstory about this presentation, actually. So this came from, was inspired when Stacy and Joey and I were working with TCL 5. And we didn't have yet a really nice pull request template in place. We're wanting to encourage the developers to write more robust pull request descriptions, which you all are just amazing at right now. So being able to write a beautiful pull request and to self-review your code is, again, it's a superpower. Whenever I go, there's a particular member on my team who's amazing at writing pull request descriptions. And I love reviewing his code because he makes it so easy for me. I know exactly where to go in the app, right? We end up working on these huge applications. We don't know where anything is. We don't know exactly what the ticket is describing, but he makes it so easy for me. He shows me screenshots or little videos. You can do this too. The way that we're writing our pull request descriptions here at the Collab Lab, if you do that on your teams, your teammates will love you, love you, love you forever. So it's really important because it gives reviewers context on your code. I think it's so easy. Like, we spend so much time working on our problems, working on our bugs, working on our features, that we know them inside and out. And it's hard to remember that other people don't have that same context. So giving them the context is, if they don't really know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, giving reviewers context is really important. And then again, a big part of interviewing for jobs is we often have take-home tests, but it's talking and walking through your code, much like the demos that you're giving here. And having a robust PR description will help you remember what you did and help communicate to the team that you're interviewing with what you did as well. Oh, yes. So how to make really great PR descriptions. Having those animated GIFs that you all use is really fantastic. Love it, love it, love it. I have started using Loom for some of my PR descriptions. It's a really great way to just offer a demo of something that maybe it's just an area of the app that somebody that's reviewing my code isn't super familiar with. So it just makes it a lot easier for them. Oh, I know exactly where I need to look now. I know what this functionality is supposed to look like. I know where to poke around in a QA sense, right? So screenshots are a must for any UI feature. GIFs and videos are fantastic. Any links to outside resources that you consulted are fantastic. Permalinks to other pieces of code in your repository are great. And then doing a self-review, as you all have been doing, is really, really, really powerful. Just showing reviewers, this is why I did this certain thing, is really helpful to give those reviewers context. So for example, let's pull up this PR description. Right, so again, it kind of follows the same format that we're using. Types of changes, really nice. I like how she cleaned up the table, very nice, that it's only just showing a new feature and update dependencies. Showing what the acceptance criteria are, again, what's closing the issue. This is a really familiar format for all of you, right? This is the same kind of PR template that we're using. I do love that they've also included a to-do list, like, oh, we didn't quite get to this part. And I'll do that a lot. I'll put up a draft PR and I'll just make a checklist, even more for myself, but then it lets your reviewers know the things that you were thinking about as you were writing that code. So that's really nice to have, like a to-do list, like, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. I didn't get to this, I'm gonna make a ticket for that. That's also very powerful. Oh, comments and code. So this is really timely for us because last week, right, Lewis shared that video of Sarah Drasner's talk at JSConf Hawaii, where I really need to go someday. That would be amazing. And I loved what she had to say about writing comments in code, really focusing on the why instead of like, this is being more imperative. This is what this code does step by step. But this is why I did this particular thing. Did everyone have a chance to watch that? video?
I shared it with a few people and they all loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was really powerful. I think the idea that code, code that isn't self-documenting isn't good enough, right? That it's really hard to have self-documenting code because we all read code very differently. What is easy to reason through for me might be completely different to what would be easy to reason about for Andrew, for example, right? We see things and read things differently. So having powerful comments in there that explain why, or if there's like a particular weird bug that you had to fix that was really perplexing and you found the fix, like in a CSS tricks article or something. It's a really great idea to link to that specific article. Like, this is where I found how to fix this particularly tricky issue. And again, right, we want to focus on the why this code was written rather than what the code does. Yeah, here's another great example from Reach UI. Reach UI is a really nice library, by the way. They create some great React components that are very accessible. Reach UI, one to think about maybe for the final stages of your app. But like, here's a comment that says, if multiple is set to true, we need to make sure the default index is an array and vice versa. We'll handle console warnings in our prop types, but this will at least keep the component from blowing up, right? That person, they're describing why this particular chunk of code was written rather than like giving information about exactly what it's doing. They're providing us some information. Why do we need this here? Cool. Yeah. So I'm curious to hear, because I saw some really great commenting this week actually in the code. I love how the group is using kind of those to-do comments in the code. And what was your experience like? I'm curious, Caitlin and Karan, who've recently, and Jonathan, actually, you've started new positions. What kind of documentation and onboarding has been like with documentation?
Yeah, my company, it seems like there's actually one person on the team who's really good at doing documentation. And so onboarding was super easy with that. Like, any question I could possibly have was answered in the documentation. Although I will say that starting the company did make me appreciate the PR templates that we use here and realize how wonderful they are and want to try and implement those on my team because it makes it a lot easier to review code.
Nice. Yes, there's really nothing more disheartening than going to a pull request. It just says close this issue, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, now I got to go and see what that issue is. And I have no idea what this is doing. Yeah, make it easier, make it easy for your reviewers.
Yeah, for me, it was there's one of my roles that when they hired me was they said that they wanted me to help with documentation. And I'm realizing that parts of the company, so like the front end side, they're a lot better. They could be better. I mean, I feel like working with you folks kind of makes us spoiled, but also helps us like give us ideas to help, as Lauren mentioned, that like we could use a similar template or something like that for PR for pull requests. And yeah, like it's a great way to learn about how the company works if you need to untangle everything and then document it. So yeah, it's definitely daunting, but I'm glad we had this presentation. This was great.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
how about you?
Yeah, there's so much documentation at Shopify, and I think like now that they've gone like remote permanently, there's just like even more now. I think we have multiple sources of documentation as well. So there's like one place which is like kind of company documentation, like benefits and stuff, and then you have the engineering documentation. We have the PR templates as well, which you mentioned, and they're awesome. And I think you showed RCAs, like we do something similar. It's just really cool, like going back through and reading through all those things. So yeah, it's really great to see like good documentation, and it makes like a big difference. Like I've definitely worked at companies where you're just kind of thrown in the deep end and you're just like, hey, here's like a bunch of steps to get this working. And then you realize that they're really outdated steps and they don't really work. So like, yeah, this is really refreshing.
Yep, for sure. And then I think one thing to say about documentation is if you don't know how to get started, you just start. Just try, document something, write it down, put it in a place, and like Confluence is what we use at our company, but different companies use different, even start in Google Docs, just a place to write down that information that then you can share with other people. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but just getting started and trying will really go a long way, honestly. Other thoughts?
Well, sorry, what does RCA stand for again?
RFC is request for change.
Oh, RFC. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I said the wrong thing. What is RCA? Did I just make up an acronym?
I don't know. I think different companies call those things different things too. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I loved how this presentation was like super tied to what we've been doing like with the last week with comments and everything. So I was excited about that. Cool. Let's go over issues for next week.
Okay, cool. Let me share my screen. That is not it. Okay, so we have 4 more issues for our team. So the next 2 issues are going to be, oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. All right, issue number 11. This one will be adding the feature to delete items. So it's possible that if someone adds an item to the list, right now we can't actually delete the items. So what we want to do is have the ability to delete an item from the shopping list. And before the user deletes it, we want to prompt them with a confirm message to make sure that they want to actually delete the item, just to prevent them from accidentally deleting it. And when the user deletes an item, it should be removed from the database. And then issue number 12. This one is, as a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I'm likely to buy them. So this won't be a sorting task. So we'll want to be able to sort them in various states. So now we'll need to check if the item needs to be bought soon, which is like less than 7 days, kind of soon, which is between 7 and 30, or not soon, which is more than 30. If an item's only been purchased once, it's inactive because we don't really have enough data to estimate the purchase date. So that's how it would be sorted. So the acceptance criteria for this one is items in the list will be visually distinct. So what you can do is with a different background color or something to indicate how soon the item needs to be purchased. And the items should also be sorted by the number of days. So I would say like the top of the list would be the ones that need to be purchased the soonest, and the bottom of the list would be the ones that can wait to be purchased. And then items with the same number of estimated days should be sorted alphabetically. And items that are in different states should be described distinctly when read by a screen reader. So does any, what are the teams for this week?
Caitlin and Daria and Karan and Abby.
Okay. So does either team have any preference for what they'd like to work
on? If Caitlin doesn't mind, I would love to try number 12.
Yeah, I'm down. That sounds cool.
Okay. So Karan and Abby will work on number 11.
Cool. What questions do you have?
For issue 12, are we assuming that the default is to just sort the items, or should it be something that the user can turn on and off?
I think it should just be sorted. You don't have to create a toggle to flip the sort. I think it'd be out of scope. So as long as it's sorted by default, that's fine.
Cool, thank you.
Can I ask a question? Is this not? For number 12, what about when you first add the item? Like, what state is that in?
That would be in the inactive state. So it should be added to the bottom of the list.
What about the dates that the user sets manually when they're adding the item? Because we have like radio buttons right now when we're adding the item, and they can say if they want to buy it within 7 days, 14, and I think 21 or something like that. Like, are we supposed to use those numbers anywhere at all?
I think actually, yeah, if we look through the possible item states again, I think that you're right, Daria, that let's say that we just added mochi ice cream to the list, but we haven't purchased it yet. So inactive only refers to if there's only one purchase in the database or the purchase is really out of date. So like, let's say I just put mochi ice cream on the list and I said I needed to buy it within 7 days. I would expect that would need to be between 7 and 30, I guess, need to buy kind of soon, between 7 and 30 days.
Yeah.
So it's a really good point. And so something to sort of take with you into your jobs is that user stories like this, like a good user story, is negotiable. And so what you're actually like, there was like a really good catch to think, like to realize like, wait, we already have a number for when the person adds the item. So is there no reason why we couldn't show that in, if it's 7 days, just show it as a needs to buy soon. So I would actually, and we could do this for future teams too, amend that last bullet in the top section to say that it's inactive just only if it's been a really long time since they purchased it. So if it's been, it says like 2x what was estimated, then it would be in an inactive state. Otherwise, we have enough data to show things in the right order.
It actually makes me think about the feature that we just created this past week, where we are initiating an empty array of estimated purchase dates. But we could actually initiate that with the value that the user is marking when they are adding the item.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I could add that next week.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Well, are there any questions in number 11?
Unless Abby has any, like, I don't have any right now.
Right.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Cool.
Great. All right, everybody. Whew. Super great work. Andrew, it was so nice having you here today.
Yeah, it was so fun. Such great demos. And like you clearly all are like super on top of the app, like super engaged, and like I was just really impressed with your demos and your explanations.
Excellent.
Thank
All
you.
right. let's see, I'm doing office hours this week, so I'll probably post a quiz tomorrow to decide when we should have office hours, and then I'll send out that invite. As always, reach out to any of us when and if you need a hand with anything, and then have a great week. Caitlin, I hope you feel okay.
Thanks. I'm stocked up on Gatorade, so hopefully I'll be fine.
Nice. Feels good to be protected, though. Feels good. All right, everybody. Have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
Hi, everyone.
See you later.
Bye, team.
Bye.
Bye.